The Grand Court of the Galactic Empire was larger than any city on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into soft blue light. Floating symbols of ancient alien lore glowed in the air. Massive pillars, carved from black crystal, stood like silent giants around the chamber. Hundreds of alien species filled the seats. Some were tall and thin with silver skin. Some were covered in scales. Some had too many eyes. Some did not blink at all. And in the center of that enormous chamber stood one human woman. Ambassador Elena Ward. She looked small compared to the alien judges floating above her. She wore a simple dark suit, no armor, no weapons, no visible fear, only a small black data case in her hand. A deep metallic voice echoed. Across the court, humanity stands accused of violating Imperial Trade Code 992A. The voice belonged to the High Judge, a tall being made of pale metal like flesh and glowing white eyes. You have disrupted approved trade routes. The judge continued. You have challenged imperial taxation authority. You have shown disrespect to founding species. Murmurs filled the chamber. Several alien delegates leaned toward each other. Humans grow bold, one whispered. They are young, another replied. Young species are always foolish. Elena remained silent. A large screen appeared above the courtroom. It displayed Earth's legal documents, the Constitution, international laws, human rights codes. One insect-like judge let out a clicking sound that resembled laughter. This, it said, is their legal foundation? The High Judge zoomed in on a sentence. All beings are born equal. For a moment, there was silence. Then the entire chamber burst into laughter. Loud, echoing, cruel. Some species slapped their claws together. Others made high-pitched screeches of amusement. Equal. One judge said, equal to founding species. Equal to empires that are 10,000 cycles old. The laughter grew louder. Elena stood perfectly still. She did not react. The High Judge looked down at her. You dare bring primitive Earth law into the Grand Court? Another wave of laughter. Humans still divide themselves by nations. One alien said mockingly. They still argue about borders. And they speak of equality. The High Judge's glowing eyes narrowed. Human ambassador, he said slowly, your species has existed in this galaxy for less than one cycle of imperial history. You have no standing to question our authority. More laughter. Some aliens were recording the moment. Others were already sending messages across the galaxy. Humans humiliated in imperial court. Elena Ward standing alone. The foolish species who thought they understood law. Elena finally moved, just one step forward. The laughter slowly weakened. She placed her black data case onto the center platform. It made a soft clicking sound as it opened. Inside was a small crystal drive. She looked up at the High Judge. Her voice was calm. Clear. Steady. Double quotes with respect, she said. Humanity understands law very well. The chamber quieted slightly. The High Judge tilted his head. You understand nothing, he replied. Elena pressed a button. The crystal activated. New documents appeared in the air. Not human law this time. Imperial law. Ancient, complex, detailed. Thousands of pages of it. Some judges stopped smiling. Elena continued speaking. When Earth joined the Imperial Trade Network, we were required to sign standard agreements. Yes, the High Judge said, as all lesser species do. She nodded slightly. We studied those agreements. A scaled judge made a dismissive sound. Of course you did. We studied every word, Elena continued. Every clause, every definition, every cross-reference. The chamber became quieter. She walked slowly in a circle as she spoke. You see, humans argue. We debate. We question. It is in our nature. We do not accept words without reading them. A few alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. The High Judge's glow dimmed slightly. Elena stopped walking. And while your empire believed we were too primitive to understand your contracts. She paused. The silence now felt heavy. We were studying them. The crystal projected a specific section of Imperial Code, highlighted in bright red dots. Several judges immediately recognized it. Their expressions changed. The High Judge spoke carefully. That section is irrelevant. Elena looked directly at him. Imperial Code 7A. She said clearly, any member civilization that proves economic harm through deception may seek full restitution under binding imperial law. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Some aliens began whispering urgently. That clause is symbolic. One judge argued, it has never been used. Another said quickly. Elena's eyes did not move away from the High Judge. Until now. The silence was no longer calm. It was tense. Unstable. The High Judge's voice lowered. Humanity does not have the authority to activate that code. Elena gently folded her hands behind her back. We do, she replied. The crystal shifted again. Evidence appeared. Trade route maps. Tax. Increased records. Hidden transportation fees. Military protection charges that were never requested. Every document carried imperial signatures, imperial approval codes, imperial seals. The laughter had completely disappeared. Now, there was only silence. Heavy silence. The High Judge stared at the floating evidence. You are making a dangerous accusation, he said. Elena shook her head softly. No, she said. We are filing a lawsuit. The words seemed to freeze the air. Some alien delegates gasped. A floating judge descended slightly lower. You dare accuse the Galactic Empire? It asked quietly. Elena corrected it. No. She looked around the massive chamber. At every alien face. At every species that once laughed. We are not accusing, she said calmly. We are suing. The words echoed through the court. Not shouted. Not emotional. Just simple. Clear. Strong. No one laughed this time. Because suddenly, for the first time, the Galactic Empire realized something terrifying. The humans had not come unprepared. They had come with evidence, and they had come to win. The High Judge finally spoke. His voice was no longer amused. This court will recess for review. As the judges retreated, whispers exploded across the chamber. What have the humans done? Can they really do this? Is Code 7 still active? In the center of the court, Elena Ward stood alone once more. But she was no longer small, and no one was laughing anymore. The Grand Court did not reopen for 12 standard hours. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity has sued the Galactic Empire. Most species did not believe it. Some laughed again in private channels. But inside the Imperial Court, no one was laughing. Behind closed chambers, the High Judges reviewed Imperial Code 7-A. It was old. Very old. Written thousands of cycles ago, when the Empire was young and still trying to appear fair. Back then, the Empire wanted trust. So they wrote laws that sounded just. But over time, those laws were never tested. No species had ever dared to use them. Until now, when the court doors finally opened again. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Representatives from dozens of systems had arrived. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of fear. In the center stood Ambassador Elena Ward once again. Calm. Still. Focused. The High Judge floated down. Slowly. This court resumes, he announced. His voice was colder now. Humanity claims economic harm through deception. Present your proof. Elena did not waste time. The crystal activated again. A three-dimensional map of trade routes filled the air. Bright lines showed shipping paths between Earth and Imperial systems. At first, Elena began. Our trade agreements appeared fair. Images shifted. Numbers appeared beside each route. Tax percentages, resource exchange rates, defense fees. But small changes were added later. She continued. A red line appeared. A 2% increase. Then another, and another. Protection adjustments. 1. Judge interrupted. Standard procedure. Elena nodded politely. Yes, that is what we were told. The map zoomed out. More routes appeared. Different sectors. Different species. The same small increases. Always. Small. Always gradual. Over years. Never large enough to cause protest. Until humans did the math. The numbers began calculating on screen. Quiet gasps filled the room. The total amount taken from Earth was massive. Far more than agreed in the original contract. The High Judge's voice remained steady. These adjustments were legal. Elena looked up, only if properly disclosed. The screen shifted again. Communication logs appeared. Earth requesting clarification on new fees. Imperial officials responding with vague answers. Administrative realignment, temporary recalibration, mandatory defense contributions. Elena let the silence grow before speaking again. None of these responses cited Code Revision 44B. Several judges stiffened. Because Revision 44B required full transparency for any economic adjustment affecting non-founding species. The Empire had ignored its own requirement. The High Judge quickly responded, "Those are minor procedural errors." Elena did not argue emotionally. She simply pressed another command. New documents appeared, signed by Imperial trade ministers, stamped with founding species authority. They showed internal discussions. Private. Not meant to be seen. One message read, "Human markets are expanding rapidly. Increase extraction rates before they understand interstellar pricing structures." Another read, "They lack legal experience at this scale. Adjust tariffs slowly." The chamber went completely silent. No whispers. No movement. The words hung in the air. Clear. Cold. Intentional. The High Judge's glow dimmed slightly. "These internal messages were never approved for public court review," he said sharply. Elena's voice remained calm. "They were obtained legally through Data Transparency Act 12C. Another ancient law, rarely used. Almost forgotten, but still valid. One younger alien delegate leaned toward another and whispered, "They studied everything." The High Judge looked around the chamber. He could feel it now. Not about humanity, but about the Empire. Elena stepped forward again. "For years, Earth paid increased tariffs, increased military fees, increased resource exports." Images of Earth factories appeared, mining colonies working overtime, human cargo ships flying longer. "Roots, we complied," she said. "We trusted the system." Her tone did not rise. That made it more powerful. But the system did not act in good faith. The phrase triggered another Imperial Code reference. Good faith clause, Section 19. If proven violated, penalties would multiply. The High Judge quickly tried to regain control. "You are implying deliberate deception." Elena met his glowing eyes. "We are proving it." The crystal projected financial models. Human economists had reconstructed the original agreement terms, compared them to what was actually charged, adjusted for inflation cycles, converted to imperial credit value. The final number appeared. Triple digit. QUADRILOIONS. The entire chamber seemed to freeze. That amount could destabilize sectors. Could weaken imperial fleets, could shift galactic power. The High Judge spoke slowly. Even if harm occurred, compensation would be negotiated. Elena shook her head gently. Imperial Code 7A requires full restitution. A pause. Plus damages under systemic exploitation statutes. Several judges exchanged uneasy looks, because that meant 3 times the total loss. 3 times. The High Judge tried one last argument. "You are a young species. You misunderstand long-term imperial strategy." Elena answered softly, "No." She looked at the surrounding alien representatives. "We understand contracts." She turned back to the judges. "And we understand when someone believes we are too small to fight back." The chamber felt different now. Earlier, humans were small. Now, they were dangerous. Not physically. Legally. One of the lower judges whispered urgently to the High Judge. "If we dismiss this, other species will review their contracts." That was the real fear, not the money, the precedent. If humanity succeeded, the entire economic structure of the Empire would be questioned. Elena gave the final statement for the session. "Humanity does not seek war." She paused. "We seek justice." Her voice echoed calmly. "We signed your laws." She let that sentence sit in the air. "And now, we are using them." The High Judge called for another recess. But this time, the silence in the chamber was not confusion. It was realization. The humans had not walked into a trap. They had built one. And the Galactic Empire had just stepped inside it. The second recess lasted longer than the first. 30 standard hours. In that time, The galaxy changed. News channels across star systems replayed the courtroom footage again and again. The moment the internal imperial messages were revealed, the moment the judges stopped laughing, the moment the word systemic exploitation echoed in the court. At first, many species reacted with disbelief. Humans are reckless, one reptilian senator said during a live broadcast. They do not understand the consequences. But while politicians spoke loudly in public, in private, governments began checking their own contracts, and that was when the real fear began. On a distant ocean world, a merchant council reviewed its original imperial trade agreement. They noticed small adjustments over time. On a mining planet near the outer belt, leaders discovered temporary defense fees that had never ended. On an agricultural moon, supply routes had been quietly redirected, increasing shipping costs every cycle. Each change had seemed small. Each fee had seemed normal. Until now, a quiet message began spreading through encrypted diplomatic channels. Review Code 7A. Back inside the Grand Court, the atmosphere was no longer mocking. It was tense. The chamber was now completely full. Even species that rarely attended imperial hearings had arrived. They were not there to support humanity. They were there to watch. Carefully. Ambassador Elena Ward stood at the center platform once again, but this time she was not alone. Behind her, holographic links connected to Earth. Human legal teams were visible in small windows of light. Dozens of lawyers, economists, historians, all calm, all prepared. The high judge floated down slowly. His voice was controlled, but colder than before. This court acknowledges the evidence presented by humanity. A murmur moved through the chamber. The Empire had acknowledged it, not dismissed, not ignored. Acknowledged. Double quotes. However, the judge continued, economic systems are complex. Long-term adjustments are necessary for galactic stability. Elena listened without interrupting. The judge continued, the Empire has protected trade routes for centuries, provided military security, prevented piracy, maintained peace. Several founding species nodded. Yes, the Empire provided order, but at what price? Elena finally spoke. Protection is not deception. The chamber went silent again. We agreed to protection, she said. We did not agree to hidden increases. The High Judge responded quickly. You benefited from imperial markets. Yes, Elena replied calmly, and we paid the agreed rate. She paused. But we did not agree to secret expansions of that rate. A new screen appeared. This time, it did not show human data. It showed something unexpected. Another species contract. The courtroom stirred. The High Judge's eyes narrowed. That document is unrelated. Elena's voice remained steady. It is directly related. The contract belonged to a small avian species from the mid-rim territories. Their representative sat frozen in the audience. The document highlighted similar patterns, gradual fee increases. Vague administrative notes. No full disclosure under Revision 44-B. Whispers spread quickly. How did the humans get that? Did they investigate others? The truth was simple. Humans had done what they always did. They researched. They compared. They studied history. Elena spoke again. When we began reviewing our contracts, we noticed similarities across sectors. The High Judge's voice hardened. This hearing concerns Earth, not the entire Empire. Elena looked around the chamber. But the pattern concerns everyone. The words landed heavily. Because now it was clear. If humanity proved systemic exploitation, it would not only apply to Earth. It could apply to dozens of species. Maybe hundreds. The High Judge called for order as the chamber grew louder. This court will not allow destabilizing speculation. Elena lifted her hand slightly. We are not speculating. Another projection appeared. Statistical analysis. Fee increases. Mapped across time and sectors. The pattern was undeniable. Young civilizations, rapid economic growth, gradual extraction. Increases. Always below protest level. Always within legal interpretation. The younger alien species in the audience looked uneasy. They had trusted the Empire. They had believed the system was fair. Now doubt spread like shadow dot in a private imperial chamber behind the courtroom. Emergency meetings were taking place. Founding species argued intensely. If we concede, one said, we lose authority. If we refuse, another replied, we invalidate our own law. And if other species join the lawsuit? A third asked quietly. That question remained unanswered. Back. In the main chamber, Elena delivered another calm statement. Humanity does not accuse the Empire of evil. She let that settle. We accuse it of breaking its own rules. The High Judge's glow flickered slightly. Rules were sacred to the Empire. Their authority depended on legal legitimacy. Without law, they were just another powerful force, and power alone never lasted forever. An elderly alien scholar stood from the audience unexpectedly. Permission to speak, he requested. After a brief hesitation, the High Judge allowed it. The scholar turned toward the court. I was present when Code 7 was written, he said slowly. The chamber became still. It was created to prevent exactly this situation. His eyes moved toward the High Judge. If the Empire ignores this case, then Code 7A becomes meaningless. And if one code becomes meaningless, all codes weaken. The silence now was not fear. It was realization. The Empire was trapped by its own system. Elena gave her closing words for the session. Humanity entered this galaxy seeking cooperation. She looked around at the gathered species. We still seek it. Her voice remained simple, but cooperation requires trust. She paused, and trust requires honesty. The High Judge did not respond immediately, because for the first time in centuries, the Empire was no longer controlling the narrative. The narrative was spreading beyond the courtroom, across systems, across trade networks, across young civilizations, who were now asking dangerous questions. When the session ended, no laughter filled the chamber. Only whispers. Only calculations, only doubt, and somewhere in the deepest holes of imperial power, leaders began to understand something they had never considered before. Humanity was not just fighting for compensation. Humanity was forcing the entire galaxy to look at the truth. And once truth spreads, it cannot be contained. The galaxy was no longer laughing. Now it was watching. Markets slowed across multiple sectors. Trade ships paused before jumping into hyperspace. Investors waited. Governments waited. Because if humanity won this case, everything would change. Inside the imperial capital, emergency alarms were not loud, but they were constant. Private meetings filled the upper towers of the Empire. Founding species argued behind sealed doors. This cannot continue. One said sharply, if other species activate Code 7A, our economy will collapse. Another replied, if we silence the humans, we prove them right. Silence followed. The Empire ruled through law, through structure. Through the belief that their system was fair. If that belief cracked, so would their control. Back in the Grand Court, the next session began. This time, the atmosphere felt different. Not just tense. Strategic. Ambassador Elena Ward stood calmly in the center once again, but behind her holographic link, the number of human legal advisors had doubled. Experts in contract law, experts in economic modeling, experts in ancient imperial language. They had spent the last 30 hours working without sleep. And they had found something new. The High Judge opened the session. The court will now review damage calculations. Elena nodded. We are prepared. The crystal-activated numbers appeared again, but this time they were broken into clear sections. Original agreement rates, actual charged rates, compounded. Growth over time. One human economist began speaking. Through the holographic link, his voice was calm and slow. We reconstructed the original trade terms using imperial inflation standards. Then we calculated the extraction difference over 12 cycles. The chamber watched the numbers rise. Higher. Then the final tool appeared. Again, the number was enormous. But Elena was not finished. She pressed another command. Under Systemic Exploitation Statute 3C, she said clearly, damages are multiplied by 3. A wave of shock moved through the courtroom. Some alien delegates physically leaned back. The High Judge responded quickly. That statute applies only if intent is proven. Elena nodded. Correct. She turned slightly. The crystal projected. The internal imperial messages again. Increase extraction rates before they understand. Adjust tariffs slowly. Exploit growth window. The words were clear. Intent was clear. The High Judge did not interrupt this time because he could not. The law was specific. If deliberate economic manipulation was proven, the multiplier applied automatically. One of the founding species representatives whispered urgently, "They are using our own language against us." That was exactly what was happening. Humans had not invented new rules. They were simply reading the existing ones more carefully than anyone ever had. Elena spoke again. "We are not asking for mercy." Her voice was steady. "We are asking for compliance with imperial law." The phrase felt sharp. Compliance. The Empire had demanded compliance from others for centuries. Now the word pointed back at them. Younger imperial judge tried a different angle. "Even if damages are awarded," he said carefully, "payment of that scale would destabilize core systems." Elena did not argue. "Yes," she said simply. The honesty surprised the chamber. "Yes," she repeated, "it would." The judge blinked. Then why demand it? Elena looked around the massive chamber. Because fairness is not determined by convenience. The silence after that sentence was heavy, but she continued. "However," she added calmly, "humanity is open to structured restitution." The chamber stirred. This was new. Structured? The High Judge asked cautiously. "Yes." Elena replied. A new projection appeared, not a demand. Proposal. Revised trade agreements, permanent transparency clauses, independent oversight, committees including non-founding species, gradual compensation over multiple cycles. The humans were not trying to destroy the Empire, they were trying to change it. And that was even more dangerous. Because reform spreads. The High Judge studied the proposal. "You prepared this in advance," he said slowly. Elena gave a small nod. "We anticipated resistance." The truth was clear now. Humanity had not walked into this courtroom in anger. They had walked in with a plan, a complete one. Behind the scenes, Imperial intelligence units had also been working. Attempts were made to challenge the authenticity of the leaked internal messages, but human cybersecurity teams had already prepared verification chains. Every document was backed by time-stamped quantum signatures. Every signature matched Imperial encryption codes. There was no weakness. No easy escape. In a private chamber, one founding leader finally said the words no one wanted to hear. "If we lose, other species will demand the same review." Another responded quietly. "If we win unfairly, rebellion will grow." The Empire was facing a choice. Pay and weaken financially. Or refuse and weaken politically. Back in open court, Elena delivered the final strike of the session. "We would also like to formally register additional reviewing parties." The High Judge stiffened. "What reviewing parties?" The crystal displayed names. 3 species from the mid-rim, 2 from the outer belt, 1 from a distant water world. They were not joining the lawsuit yet. They were observing. Preparing. The chamber filled with quiet shock. It was spreading. The High Judge's voice lowered. "Humanity understands the consequences of destabilizing an empire." Elena met his gaze directly. "Yes." Her answer was calm, unshaken. "And we understand the consequences of remaining silent." That sentence echoed across the chamber, because silence was what had allowed the system to continue for centuries. The session ended, without a verdict. But something had shifted permanently. The Empire no longer looked invincible. It looked accountable. As Elena walked out of the Grand Court, reporters from multiple systems surrounded her holographic signal. One asked, "Are you trying to bring down the Galactic Empire?" She answered simply, "No." She paused. "We are trying to make it honest." Behind her, inside the towering crystal courtroom, the High Judges remained in silent discussion. For the first time in their long history, They were not deciding how to rule others. They were deciding how to survive their own laws. And across the galaxy, young civilizations watched closely. Because if humanity succeeded, law would no longer belong only to the powerful. It would belong to everyone. The final hearing lasted 3 standard. Galactic days. No laughter returned to the Grand Court. No one whispered jokes anymore. The chamber felt heavy. Serious. Historic. Every seat was filled. Every major system was watching through live transmission. Trade networks had slowed. Military fleets remained on alert. Economic markets were frozen in uncertainty. Because what happened here would shape the future of the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Ward stood at the center platform once more. She looked tired now. Not weak. Just human. She had not slept much. Neither had the judges. The high judge floated lower than before, not above. Everyone. Closer to equal level. A small change. But everyone noticed. This court has reviewed the evidence. He began. His voice was calm, but no longer proud. The evidence includes contract records, internal communications, economic projections, and statutory interpretation. He paused. The silence stretched. Across the galaxy. Billions waited. Inside the chamber. No one moved. The High Judge continued. Imperial Code 7A has never before been activated. Another pause. But the law does not lose strength simply because it has not been used. Several founding species shifted uncomfortably. Because that sentence meant something important. The High Judge's glowing eyes turned toward Elena. Humanity has demonstrated economic harm. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. He continued. Humanity has demonstrated lack of full disclosure under Revision 44B. More tension. And humanity has demonstrated internal intent to increase extraction rates without transparent notification. Now the chamber felt like it could break from the weight of silence. The High Judge closed his eyes briefly. Then he spoke the words no one expected to hear from an imperial mouth. This court finds the Galactic Empire in violation of its own economic transparency statutes. The chamber exploded, not with laughter. With shock. Some species gasped loudly. Others simply stared. Founding species representatives looked frozen. For the first time in thousands of cycles, the Empire had been declared guilty. The High Judge raised his hand for silence. This ruling is binding. The chamber slowly quieted. Under Systemic Exploitation Statute 3C, damages are to be calculated at 3 times the verified economic harm. The final number appeared in the air again. It was enormous. Staggering. A number large enough to fund fleets. Colonies. Entire civilizations. Number large enough to shake the empire to its core. The High Judge continued. However, that word caused another wave of tension. Humanity has submitted a structured restitution proposal. The holographic document appeared. Transparent oversight, gradual repayment, equal review, rights for non-founding species. The High Judge turned toward the founding council seats. The silence there was deep. Heavy. Painful. After several long moments, one of the oldest founding representatives stood. His voice was slow. If we reject this ruling, we destroy the legitimacy of imperial law. He looked around at the chamber. If we accept it, we admit weakness. Another founding species leader responded quietly. Law without fairness is already weakness. The words echoed. Because everyone understood. The Empire's true power was never its fleets. It was its legal authority. Without that, it was just another powerful force in space. The High Judge finally made the final statement. The Galactic Empire accepts the ruling. The chamber fell silent again. Total silence. Then a wave of quiet shock spread through the audience. The Empire had accepted. Not resisted, not suppressed. Accepted. Structured restitution will proceed under joint oversight. The High Judge continued. Trade reforms will be implemented across all affected systems. He looked directly at Elena. This court acknowledges humanity as a full legal participant within imperial jurisdiction. That sentence carried deep meaning. Humanity was no longer treated as a minor species. They were recognized, equal under the law. Elena took a slow breath. For the first time, A small smile touched her face. Not pride. Relief. She stepped forward one final time. Humanity does not celebrate this ruling, she said calmly. The chamber listened carefully. We did not come here to weaken the empire. She paused. We came here to strengthen trust. Her words were simple. Honest. Across the galaxy, reactions began instantly. Young civilizations felt hope. Merchants began recalculating future profits. Political leaders realized the system had changed. And in hidden chambers, some founding species leaders began planning how to adapt. Because the old way of quiet control was over. In the center of the Grand Court, the High Judge floated silently for a moment longer. Then he spoke once more. Let this moment be recorded in imperial history. His voice was steady now. On this cycle, humanity reminded the Empire that law applies to all. The session officially ended. No applause. No cheering. Just understanding. As Elena walked out of the Grand Court, the massive doors closed behind her. Outside, dozens of alien reporters waited. One asked loudly, how does it feel to defeat the Galactic Empire? Elena stopped walking. She turned slightly. We did not defeat the Empire, she said softly. We held it accountable. And that was more powerful. Because wars end. But accountability changes systems forever. Inside the imperial capital, emergency economic teams began working immediately. Budgets were adjusted, extraction policies rewritten, transparency protocols updated. The Empire would survive, but it would never be the same. And across the stars, one truth spread faster than any ship. The aliens had laughed at human law. They had mocked Earth's ideas of equality. They had called humans primitive, but when tested, human law did not break. It held. And because it held, even an empire had to bow. The ruling changed the galaxy. Overnight. Not with explosions, not with war, but with paperwork. And that made it even more powerful. Across imperial space, new review boards were formed. Trade offices reopened old contracts. Legal departments worked without rest. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire was not expanding. It was correcting itself. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Crowds gathered in cities around the world. Large screens replayed the final moment again and again. This court finds the Galactic Empire in violation. People did not cheer wildly. They stood quietly. Proud. Because humanity had not won through force. They had won through patience, through intelligence, through discipline. Ambassador Elena Ward returned to Earth. 3 days later, there was no grand parade. No military salute. She walked out of the transport ship in a simple suit, just like the one she wore in court. Reporters surrounded her. Did you expect to win? She answered honestly. We expected the law to work. That sentence became famous across the stars. On distant colonies, young civilizations watched closely. Many of them had always believed the Empire was untouchable. Unquestionable. But now they knew something different. The Empire followed law, and law could be studied. It could be understood. It could be used. Within months, several species requested human legal advisors. Human law firms opened offices across multiple star systems. They did not carry weapons. They carried contracts. Human translators helped smaller species understand complex imperial language. Human economists taught others how to calculate long-term extraction rates. Human historians published public guides explaining imperial code in simple terms. For the first time, knowledge became more valuable than fear. Inside the imperial capital, reforms continued. New transparency systems were installed. Trade increases now required full public disclosure. Oversight councils included non-founding species representatives. The Empire remained powerful. Its fleets were still strong. Its influence was still wide. But something had changed. It was more careful. Now. More aware. Because it had learned a lesson. In a private chamber high above the capital, the High Judge stood alone, looking out at the stars. One of his advisors approached carefully. Do you regret accepting the ruling? The advisor asked. The High Judge was silent for a long moment. Then he answered, no. He looked down at the glowing city below. An empire that cannot survive truth does not deserve to survive. The advisor nodded slowly. For centuries, the empire had believed strength meant control, but now it understood something new. Strength also meant accountability. Back on Earth, Ambassador Elena Ward was invited to speak before the United Planetary Council. She stood at a simple podium. No dramatic music. No grand speech, just quiet confidence. She looked at the gathered leaders. We were underestimated, she said. That was true. Aliens had laughed at Earth's laws. They had mocked the idea that all beings were equal. They had believed humans were too divided to stand strong. But humanity had something different. Humans argued constantly. They debated. They disagreed. But when it came to fairness, they understood it deeply. Elena continued. We did not win because we are stronger. She paused. We won because we read carefully. A few quiet smiles appeared in the room. Simple words, the powerful meaning. Across the galaxy, a new phrase began spreading through trade networks and diplomatic channels. Do not underestimate humans. Some said it with respect. Some said it with caution. Some said it with fear. Because humans did not always fight with ships. They did not always fight with weapons. Sometimes they fought with documents, with research, with logic. And when humans focused on something, they did not stop easily. Years passed. The economic balance of the galaxy slowly shifted. Young civilizations grew more confident. Founding species became more transparent. Trade became more stable. Not perfect, but fairer. And whenever a new species joined the imperial network, someone always gave them the same advice. Read the contract carefully. Sometimes they added another sentence. If you do not understand it, ask a human. The laughter from that first day in court was never forgotten. Recordings of it still existed in historical archives. Scholars sometimes replayed the moment when alien judges mocked Earth's constitution. They studied it as a lesson in arrogance, because what followed that laughter reshaped galactic law forever. In her later years, Ambassador Elena Ward was asked in an interview what she felt during that first moment when the entire chamber laughed at her. She answered simply, I felt patient. The interviewer looked confused. Patient? Yes, she said. They laughed because they believed we did not belong there. She smiled slightly, but we had already done the work. That was the truth of it. Humanity had prepared quietly. Studied silently, planned carefully, while others laughed. And in the end, that preparation changed everything. The aliens once laughed at human law. They thought it was small. Primitive. Naive. But they learned something important. Human law was not about size. It was about principle. And principles, when defended with courage and intelligence, can make even empires bow. And from that day forward, no one in the galaxy ever laughed at human law again.